So I wanted to do a video on Taylor Lorenz. This is a pretty short interview, and then I got a little bit with her with Abby Martin after this.
You did say that Brian Thompson. You did say that Brian Thompson murdered tens of thousands of people, and I really do you murdered?
From the last,
I do believe
from the last videos, they said it was like a 9/11 every week.
that insurance companies denying life-saving care is murder. You are one of the millions of Americans in this country that has watched someone that you love and care about deeply suffer and die because an insurance company chose to deny them life-saving care. It is natural to wish the same fate as your loved one on the people responsible for your loved one's death. Again, that is not a very enlightened position. I wish that we could all be kumbaya. However, I think millions of Americans have watched the people they care about die brutal deaths. And I do think that we, again, need to acknowledge the violence of these systems. It is wild to me that we just finished an entire election cycle and healthcare.
So just so you know, I'm not cutting this video up. This is how it is.
Yeah, nobody talked about it.
I mean, look at this. This is a bipartisan issue. This is not something that's on the left or the right. This is something that all Americans are feeling. 62% of Americans, a recent Gallup poll said.
Just because everybody feels it doesn't mean it's not a right or left issue. And everything's a bipartisan issue. They vote yes or no, right? Everything is bipartisan.
Believe that it is the federal government's responsibility to provide health care. We are the only developed nation that does not have sort of public health care.
Yeah, but
that would be a left-wing view to say that the government is to provide health care for people. A right-wing view would be that the capitalists, the market would provide the better choice for health care, right? You know, you got the capitalists selling health care and you compete in the market. So again, it is a left versus right issue. I mean, everybody needs healthcare and wants healthcare, right? But do you want to pay for it on the private market, or do you want to pay for it through your taxes and have your government give you healthcare?
Taylor,
aren't
you? Yeah, I know. But you wrote that people have justified hatred toward insurance company CEOs because these executives are responsible for unfathomable.
And if somebody would have said that before that guy got shot, everybody would be like, "Yeah, I can understand that you have hatred for a CEO," but now that he got shot, it's a little more real, so they don't want to. They don't want to think about it.
Amount of death and suffering, but aren't the real villains members of Congress who have so far lacked the backbone to stand up to the healthcare industry and its legions of lobbyists? That's where change happens.
I completely agree that that's where meaningful change happens. We need to figure out how to hold the system accountable.
But that goes for the system, right? Like the lobbyists pay the Congress people to do the lobbyist bidding, and that goes for health insurance, so many others, right? APAC, whatever, just pick lobbyists. But anyway, it's the system, and that's another right-wing thing, right? Anything is for sale. That's what capitalism is. There's a market for Congress people. You pay for your Congressperson, you get more of their ear, more of their time. It's like Citizens United. A business is now a person, and money is now speech. So you got free speech. The more speech you have, the more ears you get.
Accountable. And I think it is very telling that the Congress people have intentionally downplayed and ignored this issue.
Yeah, I'm just, given the fact that you have a platform, and listen, I can read what people are posting too, and I hear what they're saying too, and I've had my own battles with insurance companies. It's infuriating, and it can be heartbreaking when you're facing a life-threatening condition. But to continue to talk about these CEOs are murdering people, when it's Congress, it's up to Congress to change the laws. These guys are just doing their jobs and making money.
Well, exactly, and that is...
Again, that's the system, just doing their job and making money. People under Hitler were just following orders. I mean, they're not even being ordered to do this. I think that's worse, just doing your job to make money, to let people die. That's crazy.
Blood money. And I would say it is quite an unethical business to be in. I think if I was making a living denying people life-saving healthcare, I would really question my life choices.
Right.
That said, as you mentioned, there are lots of parasitic, terrible, evil businesses out here in America. The healthcare industry is not the only one. We also have oil and gas, doing terrible things. We need lawmakers to take this seriously. We need to keep the focus on people in power. And lawmakers and the media need to make people feel heard. Because again, right now we're seeing unprecedented levels of radicalization on this issue. People are feeling like the media and these lawmakers are scolding them instead of making them feel heard. And so we really need people in power to listen to the public. Listen to the American public and take their anger seriously, because this is a barbaric system that desperately needs reform.
Taylor Lorenz, thanks so much for coming on. And
this is going to be Taylor Lorenz talking to Abby Martin from the Empire Files. Abby Martin is awesome. She's a left journalist. Check out Empire Files on YouTube.
CEO Lives Matter.
This
is the rallying cry you're hearing from politicians, the media.
Worst breakfast for your waistline. And almost all oats in the United States have glyphosate.
Thompson actually personally implemented, the 90% error rate. That's astounding. And to knowingly deploy the system with a 90% error rate, and then just another kind of level of unaccountability, right? Another way to just kind of wash your hands of responsibility by being like, oh, well, it's not me deciding whether someone lived to wake up the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Okay, yeah, my bad. When I did that, I skipped ahead a little bit, so here's the beginning.
These people want to distance themselves completely from the death and destruction that their policies and jobs create. So, of course, the pearl-clutching elite need their proverbial punching bag to tamp down on the class warfare bubbling beneath the surface. And that person of late is Taylor Lorenz.
There is something deeper, a sickness that is going on in our political class, best exemplified by the absolute nut job, Taylor Lorenz.
Moving on to the assassination of a CEO who ran a health insurance company in America. And the disturbing and brazen attack in New York City was caught on camera, but one journalist refused to dance around the issue and instead blatantly advocated for the death of insurance executives. Former Washington Post reporter Taylor Lorenz wrote this: why we want insurance executives dead.
Former Washington Post reporter, you won't believe this, Taylor Lorenz called Thompson's murder joyful.
This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Thousands of Americans that he murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people.
Taylor Lorenz, journalist at User Mag, author of Extremely Online. Thank you so much for joining me on the Empire Files.
Thanks for having me.
So Taylor, there's been a tidal wave of takes against you for your recent, what you said recently about this, for saying, quote, and people wonder why we want these executives dead, basically in bad faith, pretending that you, as well as the entire left at large, I guess, are advocating for political violence. What's your response?
Yeah, I think it's funny, especially when liberals get mad and stuff like this, because they're the ones that have been saying, they wish Trump would croak and all this stuff for years. I think you can wish that people didn't exist or were dead, unfortunately. And that doesn't mean that you are advocating murdering them.
How dare you celebrate or laugh at the death of a millionaire who's presiding as judge, jury, and executioner of the working class? This guy, you're telling me that these people don't laugh at the deaths of the poor en masse to enrich their stock portfolios? The poor who die because of the bureaucratic decisions of these capitalists.
Absolutely. And look at the deaths look at the murders that are celebrated constantly, by the way, in the US. We have people like Kyle Rittenhouse, other vigilante sort of people that have committed murders against innocent citizens, and they're lauded. So it's just the response to all of this has just been so absolutely ridiculous. This is also a country that celebrates death constantly. And it's just, it's a barbaric system. And it's very, I think, silly that people are manufacturing outrage around that comment. Oh, the poor CEO, and our hearts are out to him. And gosh, even when a CEO can't even be safe in America,
Right, when it comes to celebrating death, have you ever seen a military commercial? We celebrate death. It's really cool to go out there and be a Navy SEAL and go to all these other lands that aren't ours and just start killing. So yeah, and then thank you for your service. Every time you come back from overseas, what were you doing? You were invading somebody else's stuff. So yeah, we are a violent country.
Oh, and that's not the vibe of the country. It has not been the vibe of the country for a long time.
It is so funny because it's like one of those culturally significant moments that has just taken over the zeitgeist of the country. And there's several moments like this. I mean, the Gaza genocide, obviously, Medicare for all under Bernie. And Americans overwhelmingly feel a certain way about these issues, but we're being gaslit, especially by the corporate media and the political establishment that look at you. I mean, there's just guest after guest on these networks telling Americans how insane they are for feeling a certain way about this. And I think it's really fascinating because there's just several key things that, you know, they're trying to manufacture something that just can't click for them because the genie's out of the bottle and there's no way to put it back in.
This hydrogen water bottle is going
Man,
viral.
I hope the genie
It slows
stays
down.
out.
A brilliant water scientist from Japan.
Yeah, I mean, healthcare is something, especially in these barbaric insurance systems, are something that affect millions of people in the most direct and personal ways, right? Like, I mean, these insurance companies murder people's friends, family members. Like, we all have direct experience with this system. So when you have some multimillionaire media, you know, personality come on cable news and try to start scolding people, it just doesn't resonate. And I think that the media is really flailing and they're lashing out right now because they know that they're losing their ability to control the narrative. And it actually makes things worse. Like, as I've talked about on these networks, like, when you treat the American public like that, all you're doing is radicalizing people further against you. And for these people that claim to really want people to work within the system, well, you're basically saying fuck you to these people and you're actively alienating them and speaking down to them and scolding them. So that is not a way to, you know, build solidarity.
I mean, you just see a slew, a contingent of like people who are empathizing with Brian Thompson and empathizing with CEOs and executives and justifying all this new security measures that they're going to be taking. I haven't seen one story of a family that went into medical debt or bankruptcy or lost someone because of the denial of coverage.
Yeah, I mean, I think ProPublica has done an amazing job, a great nonprofit newsroom. But when you look at sort of corporate media and these billionaire-owned outlets, like, they don't center the interests of the working class. They center the interests of their readers, who are primarily, you know, upper class, upper middle class executives or aspiring executives, and that's who they speak to. And they sort of exist to prop up corporate power. So you're not hearing, you know.
And so that's Taylor Lorenz. If you let her speak, she sounds like a pretty decent person, right? Piers Morgan cut her off that one day, and just really since then, no one's really let her talk. They've just been jumping on her about saying it was joyful, but she was joyful that because we were going to now start having this talk, the healthcare was going to be on the front burner now instead of nowhere on the stove. But so again, left wing, you want government, we want to pay taxes and have the government either pay our bills or run our healthcare, whatever you call it. And then if you don't like government, run for it. If you say the government doesn't work and all this, join the Green Party, join the Libertarian Party. If you must, join the Democrats or Republicans, but they're not really going to do nothing. So if you don't like the government, do something about it. But other than that, like especially healthcare, where you want to pay these companies to deny us, right? Like, I mean, that's Taylor Lorenz. If you want to check out the rest of that interview, I'll put it in the description below. So until next time.